Greetings, this is Warrior King, and the time has come for the lions and the lioness to tell their own story. This is the lion's voice. Give thanks and praise for the wonderful blessing that's been poured on me. Give thanks and praise. Jah use a yet an instrument to set the people free. Jah give all the powers to chant. Jah give all the powers to chant. Rastafari, the lion's voice.
What are you waiting for? Come together, calling from near and far. Know who you are. What are you waiting for? Rally up, it's Exodus. What are you waiting for? Ancestors paved the way for us. Yes, I am Ketis Oyonde, asking, what are you waiting for to come together? The time has come for the lions to tell our own story. This is the lion's voice.
Yes, job people, this is Michael Shemai representing. I will say, hear the lion voice, saying it is time for the lions and the lionesses to tell their own story. King David killed Goliath with a stone, we original dread.
The fittest of the fittest shall survive. But people, open your eyes, wake up. Blessed Lord, this is Queen Omega representing for all lions and lionesses. With the lion's voice, we come to tell our story. Rastafari, live it. Hey, the lion's voice, Rastafari.
It's AWTITUDE representing for Lion's Voice. Yes, massive. This is the time for I and I, the lion, them to tell I and I story, our story. Yes, and we reign and rule like this. Reign and rule, yeah. Selassie, I reign and rule. You can't take the lion vibes, people. If you no fool, cause we no Selassie reign and rule. Reign and rule. Selassie, I reign and rule. Queen Omega drop them in the fire, pull from them, no Queen Omega, she reign and rule. Royal Kushite, ancient essence, Emperor Selassie in a majestical presence, flash of all sevens, projecting through I and I events. We sing a song for the king, we bring joy and blessing and overstanding, yeah. We hear Jah every day. Reign and rule, yeah. Selassie, I reign and rule. Yes, I lion vibes, Selassie, I reign and rule. Attitude say that. Boondocks, Black Organization of Noble Diplomats optimizing expressions to the world. Till the world, till the end.
Amina, the time has come for the lioness to tell our own story. No surrender, no retreat, we are Jaja soldier. Rougher than the streets, tougher than a boulder. Bigging up Lamb's voice. Now put it, I jolly for say that.
Greetings, this is Ras Shiloh. The time has come for the lions to tell their own story. See? This is the lion's voice. Keep it locked, right here, sir. Ras Shiloh said that. Are you satisfied? Wipe those tears from your eyes. I'm all alone, still you thought I was telling a lie. This is the lion's voice. Keep it locked, right here, sir.
I will never stop, hail the Most High, and I will never stop, call Rastafari. Blessed love, this is Kushite representing for the Lion's Voice. We are here to tell our own story, Rastafari.
Yeah, David Dread of Steel Pulse, and I'm saying hail to the lion voice because it's time that the lion have its voice, have its own story. Says I'm stepping out here. Hear me now. Yeah, the lion's voice. Raw.
Well, lion voice, tell them that's the people first choice. Lion voice, make the lioness them feel nice. Lion voice, with the lion cubs we sacrifice. Lion voice, got to show the people them the life. Lion voice.
Jano, I'm so hungry, bro. I haven't eaten all day. Like, my head started to hurt me too. Like, what now could I eat right now?
What about a city samosa? Get your samosa, a fusion of Indian, Jamaican, and African culture. City samosas, the best samosas in the city.
Yo. I'm here writing all these modern scrolls. Has a redemption for bloodshed on Sodom Road. Stories that trigger happy now to shot all of his foes. This is the outcome of 500 years down here in the West. Mothers forced to manual labor with no rest. The cost of living in the West is leaving us penniless. Loudly I hear the cries of my peoples being released out of cages of desert eagles, leaving the victim garment see-through. If you overstand the level, he who feels it knows the down oppression of the devil. Toss the Pope in the fire, Gideon black rebels. My sword is my word manifested in flesh. Blessed to get it used for homeless with a place to rest. Selassie say close the naked, shelter for the shelterless. Babylon you can't govern because your heart is too dirty. Behold the lion of Judah, he get low this worthy.
So hail his majesty. Hail him, King of glory. Hail him, might of the Trinity. Ras Tafari crown every African free. So hail his majesty. Hail him, King of glory. Hail him, might of the Trinity. Ras Tafari crown every African free. I'm Bessa, trample the down presser. Work for the youths, the mothers, the ancestors. Bad situation must get better. Weak by ourselves, but we must stand together. Stop eating deaders, grow out your dreaders. You need your locks like the chicken needs its feathers. Chant forever, the king reigns forever. Don't get caught in the Babylon pleasure. Watch the flames get redder, chains get scarcer. Lock down the planes and you're stuck in the area. When Wall Street crashed, the foolish passed. The wise man up in the hills with his store to last. There's more to grasp in this life than just horse with ass. Stores of cash and you blinking when the poor man passed. It's never too small to share, food or gear. I'm a Gideon, are you prepared? I move to kick and I move to snare. Two things that don't move me is doubt and fear. Cause the great king is everywhere. In water and land, in man and air. So hail his majesty. Hail him, King of glory. Hail him, might of the Trinity. Ras Tafari crown every African priest. Hail his majesty. Hail him, King of glory. Hail him, might.
What do you have to tell the people about Ras Tafari?
Light to the world. The King of Kings and the conquering line of the tribe of Judah. I left himself. Where's rightful ruler? Hey yo! Yeah! Hail him high, hail the black king, born the 23rd of July. So tell them guy, who praise God up in the sky, it's a lie. The Almighty living on your night. From ancient time them a try. Them Romans know them just up in them suit and ties. Criminals ain't got no alibi, they stole my people. Then them come without them genocide.
Are you talking about slavery?
Them couldn't kill the lion they come conquer Judah tribe. Go through tribulation, and I strive, see sufferation, and I still rise. That's why we tell them in America, live Rastafari in every ghetto area. We come to tell them in a Toronto, straight at Greetings in that divine name of His Imperial Majesty, Emperor Haile Selassie I the First. Glory and honor in the name of His chosen Queen, Empress Waziri Menen. My name is Kwasi Bonsu, aka the Dejazmatch Kwasi, aka Ras Kwasi, aka the Reading Ras, aka the Pan African Happy Man. I'm a creative industry attorney. I'm an author. I'm an artist. I'm an actionist. And right now, I am the host of Lion Talk. Welcome to Lion Talk and welcome to the Lion Voice Network, where the lions are telling our own stories. This is another special episode. Tonight we return to the foundation of the movement. We just celebrated the Earth Strong of the Honorable Leonard P. Howell, Leonard Percival Howell. We had a special Earth Strong edition on Monday with two UII, University of the West Indies professors, lecturers, Dr. Kadamawi Naif and Dr. Jalani Naya. If you have not seen that, when you're finished with this episode, make sure you go check out that in the archive. Just go to the homepage on YouTube, click the live tab, and you get the full episode of the lives, and we'll start putting up some clips shortly. So we're gonna go again because I wanted to get this bridging as part of the reasoning that we're gonna have tonight, but they had an event. He's a board member of the Leonard P. Howell Foundation, and they had an event yesterday at the Bob Marley Museum in Jamaica where they were screening a film, the first Rasta about Leonard Hall. So he wasn't able to join us, but we have him here tonight. So we're going to go further into the foundation of Leonard Howell, and there's no better time. We're on the brink of the Armageddon War escalating, and what am I talking about? We have America getting ready to intervene on the behalf of Israel and Iran. I tell the ones them, read Ezekiel 38, 39, read about the clean break strategy. So when we make these talk, we're not just saying it based on any one thing. Just know that people are trying to implement the biblical prophecy right now. So it's a very dangerous time on earth. We're looking at a time of war for the next probably decade. Food shortages, travel ban, this, that, chaos. And so it's very important as Rastafari, as Pan-African family, that we really examine the foundation of what we're doing as we build to the Rastafari golden age, because as Babylon fall, I and I rise, because it's been Babylon majority that's been keeping I and I down, paying ones to destabilize I and I. So as them crash and their resource crash naturally, and we see it in Africa with the rise of the AES, with the rise, of African governments taking forward their natural resources, investing in their populations. We're seeing it. Ibrahim Traore, that we've covered extensively on this network, being the most shining example. But there are other examples in other nations now that are following suit. So we're in spectacular times, family. Spectacular times. Historic times for any other students of history. How kinetic things are right now. Things are moving every day, major headlines. Not no small thing. So as Rastafari now, we have to be on top of our things them and make sure that we, as people with the far eye, with that far vision, we're not just spectators watching events unfold. We have to know that we are the sons and daughters of the prophecy. We've been chanting the prophecy. We've been chanting the united Africa that is now unfolding in its fullness. We've been chanting to free the herb, which is being freed up right now. We've been chanting eco-friendly, balance with Mother Nature from them time. Everything that the elders champion has now become paramount on the earth. So we cannot be passive bystanders to what is happening. It's serious.
And as Ras Roots Life just say, yes, I major energy shift happening. There's it's undeniable because so much blood is being shed through the wars taking place. Any transitional period in history, you have three major elements: blood, sweat, tears. You know what I mean? These things, when these things are being shed in high amounts, it's a time of a lot of spiritual activity. These are the times to fast, pray, put in work, because there's so much spiritual energy in this time that whatever you put your iris into, you can manifest it rapidly, because of all of the energy being loose, spiritual energy, because energy cannot be created. It merely transforms. What I mean? It cannot be created or destroyed, it merely transforms. So with so many people dying on the battlefield, and this is why you have a lot of these secret societies that like human sacrifice, because they're feeding off of this energy transfer to do other magic and witchcraft or them seat in themselves. So right now is a time like that on the earth where warfare is going to predominate, and we have to use the time to build, the concept. And this is why on this channel you see we don't stop talk about the building of Zion, the golden age. Because if we don't have an outcome in mind, how can we manifest it? If we're not thinking, if we're not fixated on an outcome, how do we manifest it? And this is the problem that a lot of I have, is not being clear what our purpose is. What is your lane? We will be having a meeting of the Association of Rastafari Creative this Sunday. We're also going to be having our Lion Pride on Patreon Town Hall meeting this Sunday. So make sure you tune in. I'll post on our community page the flyer for ARC, and in our Patreon I'll post it. Make sure. And one of the things we're talking about is personal branding. We're going to be touching on AI. We're going to be touching on different things, because now is the time to manifest. Whatever that plan, that business, that passion, you need to be putting it in place. A lot of jobs will be lost as things fluctuate. The price of gas is about to go through the roof. Might be $300 a barrel. They're saying, $10 a gallon, $20 a gallon. Who knows? But it's going to be rough, especially if you have an SUV to fill up your tank. So serious times ahead, family. But we were made for these times. You know what I mean? Rastafari, the Pan-African family, we were made for these times, because we are the bearers of the revolutionary sounds in the society from them time to now. So now the rest of the society, mainstream, have to catch up to where we've been. We've been living at this frequency. So let us shine the way we need to shine. Before I bring forward the guests, and we're working out, he had another event, so he's going to join us shortly. I just spoke with him. Let us big up the greatest online community, which is the Lion Pride. If you subscribe, you're part of the Lion Pride, the greatest online community. We have 38 Fire Angels who have joined us in the Patreon. We're going to be doing our live town hall meeting. And the whole concept of the Patreon is that we're building a virtual village. We're trying to bring together the like minds from around the world so we can come together and strengthen each other and build an architecture that's actually doing work, making impact. That's one of the visions I've always had with the ecosystem model, is that when everybody have an ecosystem going on, then you can never fall, because you can always tap in all of the ecosystems. You look in nature or a root system, all of the roots them work together, interlocking to keep that stability. And that's what we want right now, is to have every Rastafari Pan-African person have their ecosystem, their website, their YouTube channel, their social media. They know how to use it properly, not just scrolling, but to use it to market whatever your product or your service. So we're building that team in our Patreon. If you want to join us, join on the Patreon. We'll have it. We'll scroll it across the screen for you. So if you want to join us this Sunday, I think I'm going to make the meeting 5 p.m. because of the art meeting. We have to push it back a little bit. I'll do a poll in the Patreon to see when ones are available. But we're building, and whatever you're doing right now is the time. You got to join an organization. It don't have to be the Lion Pride on Patreon, but join something. Right now is a time for collective security. Lone lion and lioness thing now go work right now, family. Gideon, when things lock off, you want to be part of a network. Big up to the Idor family. We have been reasoning about coming together. We're going to be coming together to put together a regional food security plan for the families. We're here in Washington, D.C., where the wars are being planned. So we have to really make sure we put our things together. If the city locked down, how are we going to communicate? How are we going to access food if the grocery stores them locked down? We are putting that plan in place here in Washington, D.C. as a Rastafari community. But I'm also saying to all of our Rastafari and Pan-African communities, now is the time to put plans in place. So if you're not part of a collective, some type of family where you can, reason about serious topics, if you're still in group and people still talking just about pop culture or about sports, you need to change up your group. You need to be in conversations with people who are having serious, far-sighted conversations. Are you storing canned goods in your house? How much days of water do you have? Can you survive? These are the reasonings you need to be having right now on Earth, no matter where you are, because again, the global supply chain is interconnected. So once war take place and piece of the supply chain pop down, everywhere can be affected. So this is a serious time. And again, we're organizing globally through the Lion Pride on Patreon. We have resources globally. And that's the way we're going to build. One of the key institutions that we have to build up is the Rastafari Independent Non-Aligned Media. His Majesty gave I the vision and told I, now is the time, put your energy and build it. So I'm here building it because we have to have that platform where, the identity can be expressed, where we can see what the resources look like by reasonings with different professionals, different skilled ones, so we can really control our narrative as we prepare to return home and to the continent. And for those who don't want to go home to the continent, it's still a benefit, because wherever you are, wherever you're holding space, you want to be connected and know what's happening in the wider Rastafari Pan-African world. And we are building a platform like that. We're going to be traveling this year. We're going to be making a trip to Ghana a little later in the year, so you'll be getting that exclusive footage. We're probably going to touch Jamaica at some point. But we want to do more traveling, and that will come as the channel revenue can sustain. I'm trying to get it to where I can be full-time doing the content now, because I think it's time to, as I say, go out there and also be able to use the capital to make sure that we put some things in place as an immunity, because we're lacking physical institutions, and we need them right now. And we need ones who are bold enough to invest to build these institutions. And I'm one of those brethren who willing and able to get things done and execute once I have the capital. So we're building that architecture in real time, and it's going to take a collective effort. So when you see I here, it's not just Dejazmatch Kwasi or Ras Kwasi here. No, I represent an immunity. I represent the Lion Pride and Patreon, the 38 ones who have seen the vision, who are supporting now, and to the hundreds that will follow. And we have a responsibility to the family to make sure that the integrity of Rastafari is demonstrated at a high level, high frequency Rastafari reasoning, just like I had growing up as a youth. We want the whole world to have access to that through Rastafari Independent Non-Aligned Media. So join us in the Patreon. We're making history, racing toward 43,000 in the Lion Pride. And, you know what I mean, we have Ubuntu Lion Pride growing nicely too. Lion Pride and Patreon. All of these things are part of this uprising family. So just stay tuned. There's a lot that's taking place right now. We're also going to be showcasing the RMO Live, the RMO, which is the Rastafari Mansion and organization. They have put together a live platform that is now allowing the executive to reason with the rest of the Rastafari world. This is very important because Jamaica occupies an important role in the global Rastafari family, but it's been very difficult to find out what's going on there and the communication. And, you know, other than little dribblings, that one voice has been lacking. So the RMO has been taking a lead. And again, you have other institutions and organizations in Jamaica. Nothing is stopping other ones from mobilizing, but there's an effort. It's moving forward. And, you know, I've been a part in terms of being an advisor, legal advisor. And of course, ARC is one of the founding members of the RMO. So I've been involved, and I really give thanks for the work that's going through. They've hired a full-time staff person, which is, to my knowledge, history in all of Rastafari globally. And correct I if I'm wrong, if we've had any umbrella organization that have employed a full-time staff person. Let I know, but I don't know of it. So we're making progress, is what I'm saying, family. And it's a great feeling to be a part of historic movements when world history is being made. If you haven't seen the episode I did on Israel's attack on Iran, go and check it out. We went through Ezekiel 38, 39, which lists a group of nations that they say would rise up against Israel in the end time. And then you realize that there is a policy paper, Operation Clean Break, that Israel adopted, which said about them destabilizing these governments. And when you line it up with the wars America has fought over the last 20 years, you realize they are one for one, from Libya, Sudan, Somalia, Iraq, Iran, you know what I mean, Syria, all of them they're on the list, you know what I mean? So this is a prophetic time. Whether you love the Bible or you don't love the Bible, you have to know that there are people who are reading these ancient scrolls and they are trying to implement the Battle of Armageddon, and they're doing it right now. So it don't matter how you feel about the Bible, it just knows that this book, and this is what the great Robert Nesta Marley said, we got to fulfill the book. You know what I mean? That is what's happening right now. The question is, are we prepared as Rastafari? And we have a model, which is Leonard P. Howell. If you have not seen the episode from Monday, as I said, go and check it out. But Leonard Howell was doing the work. He set an economic model. We were persecuted. You know what I mean? We were persecuted in 1954. And from there, Rastafari was plunged into poverty. And we have kept that kind of impoverished status ever since. So now, as I said, as Armageddon war unfolds, we have to return to the foundation, because we need capital to build anything, to do any work right now on earth. We need the capital. So we have to evaluate the model in terms of I and I as a Rastafari family and make sure that we look at Pinnacle, the lessons to be learned, the global impact Leonard Hall had, you know what I mean, and make sure that we, as the Rastafari of today, are doing what is necessary to advance us to that next level. I have to big up the Action Lion Pride, the people who like, they comment, they share. It's almost every day now I get a phone call or a message about the platform and the impact that it's having out there globally. So I really give thanks. And when I reach out to guests that I don't know, it's very rare now that you reach out to a one who is a Rastafari one and they have not heard about the platform or seen an episode. So we're making some headway in terms of the family, and the feed forward has been almost 100% positive. One and two people comment sometime with some negative things, but in terms of the commentary, 100% positive. And I want the family to know that this is just phase one of the uprising of this platform. So how you see it now, call it amateur if you want to call it that, but we're learning on as we go. But the concept that we have for Rastafari independent media is on the level of the BET, the MTV, the ABC, in terms of the finished product. We're not talking about the content, because the content on those platforms is not acceptable. But we want world-class Rastafari concept, content for the family, blockbuster film, documentary, animated cartoons. Can you imagine a Battle of Ottawa cartoon? Can you imagine the birth of Ras Tafari cartoon? That's one of the things I want to do at my book. If you haven't got my book, get the book. I thought I had it here. I was going to hold it up, but I don't see it. But we have so much content and culture within us as Rastafari that we can highlight. I don't want to have to go Netflix and scroll through Netflix or try to watch something, and then when you watch it, it have some type of lifestyle where don't fit your lifestyle. You know what I mean? Not that we can't watch other people culture and thing, but where is our representation? When is the last time you've seen an accurate representation of a Rastafari brethren and sister in a mainstream film? You know what I mean? So these are the things that we want to do with the Lion Voice Network. So we're in our early stage. So if you are here early, meaning you're a subscriber before we hit 1 million subscribers, give thanks and know that you're witnessing something historic here as we rise, and know that you're also looking at something that continues the legacy of Leonard P. Howell, who was an entrepreneur, a businessman, and we are taking the same type of philosophy as a Leonard Hall. You know what I mean? We are making sure that we are doing the work that we have to do. You know what I mean? 1 second here, I'm just making sure our guest is good to go. All right, a little bit more time. So family, if you're watching live, let us know where you're watching from. Drop a line. Let us have a reasoning about Leonard Hall, the lessons that we can learn about to bring us to this golden age. Because as Babylon is at war, we have to be planning to build the alternative to the war, or else what we are going to do? We just are going to take the mark of the beast and lie down when they take away. Because part of this is also, remember, to crash the system so they can build up a new system. All the fiat currencies, if you notice, with the amount of debt, and when they take away the fiat, what's coming next is the digital. You know what I mean? So with the digital, now a man can lock you off remotely. If you don't do what you're supposed to do, they can lock off your money supply. You know what I mean? So this is the seriousness Big up Akashic, Lion Pride on Patreon. Locked in from California. His sons are listening. Bless up to Akashic family, to the sons. Blessing. Are you saying that the Bible has not been fulfilled in its entirety? No, it has not been fulfilled in its entirety. I don't think so. You know, one may disagree, but I don't think so. You know what I mean? Um, lot of things I think still remaining, um, for sure. And what we're watching, right now, as I said, regardless of how we feel about it, you have to know that ones are checking Ezekiel 38:39 right now, and that's what the motivation is for their radical action. The Israelis are looking to bring forward their Messiah. You know what I mean? Um, as I said on this channel, and I keep saying it, the Elas Mosque, which is in Jerusalem, is going to be destroyed at some point during this whole drama, so that they can rebuild the third temple of Solomon. And if you know, that is the second holiest site in Islam. This is going to create a firestorm, and one bag of things are going to happen. What I'm saying to the item is not if, is when. Because right now, Israel cannot stop this war. Their infrastructure is badly damaged. They've closed their borders. Nobody can leave. Because if they stop, the society will collapse. So they're all in. It's all or nothing right now. So this is why I'm telling the family, make sure that you're part of an organization. Make sure you're mobilizing locally and internationally, because both are important. Yes, I'm on here, connecting with the international family, but I'm also working locally with my local Rastafari family, because if things lock down, these people locally are the ones we're going to have to work together. Make sure we have enough food, make sure we have water, make sure we check in on the elders. You know what I mean? Make sure the youth them can connect with them one another. That's the time that we're living in, family. These are serious times, and like I said, if you're in a friend group and you and your brethren and your sister get together and you're bun chalice and a smoke and there's no planning happening, you're in the wrong space, and you might be you the one that have to block that sound to the family and say, we're brethren and sister, but how do you feel about what's happening internationally, and how can we prepare together? What can we do? What can we put in place? These are the type of conversations ones need to be having it. And remember, we are lions, we're not ostrich. We don't put our head in the sand and try pretend that is business as usual. And I mean, that's not who we are as Rastafari, Pan African people. Like I said, we are the ones on the frequency of revolution, the brave who not afraid to talk truth to power, all of this that we have been built up on. Now the rubber meets the road. Zaman Gideon time. What are we gonna do? And this is where it gets real. This is where you need to support. This is where we need to build an economic base. You know what I mean? This is where we need to build our communities. You know what I mean? This is where we need to control our agriculture, make sure we can feed ourselves with ITAL food, non-GMO food. This is where all of these things now become predominant, because what if the trucks don't reach the grocery store? Do you know how fragile a modern city is, to shut down right now if the supply chain is interrupted? Particularly for I and I that live in modern cities. If you live in a rural area, you're better off right now. You know what I mean? So we have to understand how serious it is right now to live in these times, and how serious it is to prepare. And this is why, again, I want to spend some time reasoning about the Honorable Leonard Howell, our guest tonight, Dr. Michael Barnett from the University of the West Indies. He'll be joining us shortly. I've just reasoned with the brethren. He just asked for a little bit more time. But we're going to welcome him. He's a board member of the Leonard Hall Foundation. And we're going to talk about Leonard Howell and the lessons that he has for us building this Rastafari golden age. What does this look like in real life? Because again, if we don't have an outcome in mind, if we don't have a goal as Rastafari people, then we're going to be floating in space. We're just spectators when we need to be active participants in shaping the future. Cause we say Zion on earth, you know what I mean? We say we're not going to know heaven in the sky, you know what I mean? These are the things that we champion. And where is our heaven if it's not on the earth? You look and we're still impoverished people struggling to maintain our families and these things. That's not the royal dignity that was left to I and I by the example of His and Her Imperial Majesties. You know what I mean? We are nobility, and by taking on the liberty, we take on that nobility personification. That's why we take these honorific titles like Ras, Dejazmatch. These are noble titles. These are not titles of just anyone. And we, even though not being born into nobility, even though we are the children of the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade and colonialisms, we still take on these noble titles through the revelation of His Imperial Majesty Emperor Selassie the First. So that means that we should not be trying to live in an impoverished type of way. We should be living in a way that embodies that royalty. And what does that look like? Because His Majesty never just go around and pose. He was building schools, building health centers, building hospitals, building roads. So once you have the resource, it means that you have a responsibility to invest in your people to raise their standard of living. That's the only way to be wealthy and to not dwell within sin. That's why I say easier for a camel to enter the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter Zion. Meaning, when you're wealthy, is a big responsibility. His Majesty show us how to thread that needle through righteousness. And this is what Rastafari should be, a force that's on the continent, transforming slums into gardens, ghettos into gardens, going through the slums, helping to redevelop new materials. We know how to use bamboo to build housing. We know how to use mud brick to build top of the line, using the environment to build top of the line housing, aesthetically pleasing, modern and ancient housing. We're supposed to look on a block in a inner city slum in Kenya, in Kabira slum, big up the Kenya family, and say, you know what, we're going to transform this acre right now into a modern kind of eco-friendly dwellings for the ones them. And we go acre by acre within the slum, and by 10 years time the whole slum transform into a beautiful garden. This is the work a Rastafari supposed to be doing around the world. You know what I mean? That transformation. And I live in Washington, D.C., so I know what it means to be able to watch transformation. We had something called gentrification, and the people in America would know what I'm talking about. This is where the Europeans then come in and take a ghetto that was a slum, a dirty slum, and change it into a multi-million-dollar settings. I saw this live. I seen a whole city transform, you know what I mean, into that 10-year span. So I've seen that, and the reason His Majesty make I and I see these things is because this is the work that I and I have, and it was done with a lot of capital. But don't take I and I word for it. Our guest has arrived. So help I give a warm lion pride welcome to our guest for the evening. He's not the first time he have his episode. You can go check it out. But tonight we're talking about one of our Pan-African giants, the Honorable Leonard P. Howell. Help us to welcome Dr. Michael Barnett. Welcome to Dr. Michael Barnett. Welcome, family.
Yes, give thanks, Ras Kwasi, Yeah, man. Give thanks for, you know, staying current and pushing the legacy of Leonard Hall, in this month of June, which, basically should encapsulate many celebrations of Leonard Hall, but it is what it is.
Well, as we get bigger, one of the things I want to do with this platform is sponsor events. You know what I mean? So definitely, once we have that ability, we would love to sponsor Leonard Hall Day with the Leonard Hall Foundation, and then be able to film it and show it. You know what I mean? So that's the kind of vision that I have for the Lion Voice Network and Rastafari Media, because Leonard Hall, and this is one of the things I want to talk to the eye about, because I think we're not doing a good job in really highlighting Leonard Hall as a Pan-African giant, not just in Rastafari circles should Leonard Hall's name be known, because he was a great Pan-Africanist, in terms of being a Garveyite and then implementing the teachings of Garvey. Can you talk to us about Leonard Hall as a Pan-African figure?
Well, yes, just as you said, Rasquazi, he was with his sojourn in the US in the 1920s. He was very active in the UNIA, Garvey's, Universal Negro Improvement Association. In fact, as you mentioned, he did take on that organizational strategy that Garvey had implemented with the UNIA, and we see that with the Pinnacle establishment of Pinnacle in 1940, that he had soldiers there to guard the camp. He had the economic nationalism that Garvey advocated for, that black people should be self-sufficient, self-reliant economically. They were independent in terms of the agricultural produce, and they had livestock. They had the ganja they grew as a cash crop. So that whole self-sufficiency, self-reliance, definitely I think was due to the influence of Garvey, of being part of the UNIA in the 1920s, when really it was at its peak. And in the US as well, being in Harlem and everything like that, which was a mecca of black activism and black advocacy at the time, the 1920s, the Harlem Renaissance period and all of that. He absorbed all of that. And coming to Jamaica was able to bring that perspective to the community in Jamaica. And also, even organizational wherewithal to get the followers together and to galvanize the different skills and attributes of the members and so forth, so that to make the Pinnacle community a thriving and very fruitful community. I mean, these things aren't just ad hoc. You need somebody with organizational skills to do it. This is a reality. And you don't just, 1, 2, 3, and it just come together like that. No, you have to have organization, you have to have vision, you have to have foresight. He had all of these. And this is probably why he was on the radar of colonial Jamaica. I mean, I said without any doubt that he was the most persecuted Rastafari, certainly of all the leaders. I mean, many of the Rastafari leaders, the early ones, suffered persecution, and Joseph Nathaniel Hibbert was jailed. Robert Hines was jailed, Archibald Dunkley, these first generation leaders, but none of them was persecuted as much as Leonard Hall. He was in and out of jail. If he was in jail, he was in Bellevue a couple of years, back and forth. So, he endured a lot. He endured a lot of suffering, a lot of pain. And unfortunately, and Pinnacle was destroyed. That encampment was finally destroyed was in three strikes, really. But the Ganja raid in 1954, ordered by Bustamante, was really a knife in the chest, because they burned down the Ganja fields, they burned down many of the houses, the Watland Door cottages that people lived in, and burned out the fields of food, so that this diminished the comforts and the buoyancy of that community from 54. So people were on a survivalist mode, those who remained in Pinnacle. And in two subsequent raids, one in 56 and 1958, everybody was evicted from Pinnacle. So the Howellites, the followers, were left destitute, penniless. So you went from living a comfortable, you know, a comfortable, self-reliant lifestyle and not wanting for anything to being destitute, homeless, and so a lot of mental anguish and unfortunately generational poverty that
Yes.
came from that. So I can tell you today, I know as a fact because I go to Tregator Park, at least, 2 or 3 times a year, and I see the poverty of the whole lives who are there. There are only a few, very few, who were living at Pinnacle during its heyday, but their subsequent generations have inherited the poverty that they suffered when they were evicted from Pinnacle.
Serious. And I think that's so important that you let ones know the Howellites still are there. It's not a historical memory. There are still ones who, were at Pinnacle. They're elderly now, but they're still there. We spoke about this on Monday in terms of the chanting, the spiritual dynamic. And we understand that it was more a Kumina kind of vibration. Can you speak to the spiritual life at Pinnacle? Because this was a revolutionary concept that Leonard Hall was coming with, the divinity of an Ethiopian emperor in pre-independence Jamaica, or pre-autonomous Jamaica, because Jamaica not independent to I.
Yeah.
But, how talk to us about that spiritual life and how it evolved at Pinnacle.
Well, in terms of the Kumina, we have to realize that was influenced by the Congolese population that we have in Jamaica, in St. Thomas, because Congolese community came really, most of them as indentured servants, right after the abolition of slavery in Jamaica. But there was a high concentration in St. Thomas, and the style of drumming, kumina, and even, I want to say, let people know, the smoking of herb, of ganja, call it what you want. Congolese came with that tradition of smoking ganja.
Okay.
All right. So it's not, sometimes people just give credit to the Indian community for that. But aside from the Indian community, who, yes, did smoke ganja or the holy herb, Congolese did as well. So that was also part, it's not just drumming kumina, but smoking the herb and getting that inspiration. It's an African tradition.
Okay.
And I want ones to realize that the Naya Bingi drumming that we have today is an evolution. It's really a mix of kumina and boro. African drumming style is a combination. So, people, there are some ones who, whatever reason, don't really respect kumina for whatever reason. But it's an African drumming style, and we have to be open-minded enough to accept all of our African traditions, to accept them,
Yeah, I tried within the order of the Naya Bingi, and what we realize is, and I think it's getting better, is that we just kind of burn out every other type of anything that is not Naya Bingi. But traveling to Africa, and experiencing the root culture, we realize we have to be a lot more tolerant, and we have to allow for other forms of African expression to bring this unity. You know what I mean? So as Naya Bingi man, 'cause even sometime in my comments, Bingi family will come in and burn a fire upon someone. But we have to explain that Rastafari is diverse, and unity does not mean uniformity.
There you go. There you go. That's the reality. That is the reality. Because let me just tell you this. I mean, for the record, listeners, the Howlites, and this is even from the time of Leonard Hall, actually flew the red, gold, and green with red on top, just as
Okay.
Baba Shanti. So it's converse to Nyabingi tradition, but that's the reality, if you like. So in terms of the mansional um, idiosyncrasies, then of the whole lights, there are differences between that and Nyabingi. Now, what has happened is Rastafari has evolved into many different mansions and houses. So even Baba Shanti, we know, fly red on top, and their Nyabingi drumming pattern is different to that of the Nyabingi mansion of drumming, but the Baba Shanti, if you ask them, so far as they're concerned, you know, their drumming is Nyabingi in and of itself, but we have to be open to the reality that there are many different mansions and organizations that comprise Rastafari. It's not just one mansion. No, it's multiple. In my father's house, there are many mansions. We often say.
What was the distinction between Leonard Howell, Archibald Dunkley, Joseph Hibbert, and who
And
else
Robert Hines. Well, let me say
Hines,
very
yes.
importantly, in the early years of Leonard Hall preaching Rastafari and the divinity of His Majesty, he comes to Jamaica in December 1932, and really it's early 1933. He's preaching around the island, but he was in partnership with Robert Hines.
Okay.
Robert Hines, who used to be a lieutenant from our famous uh who I'm talking, yeah the leader Bedward, Alexander
Okay.
Bedward. He was a lieutenant to Alexander Bedward.
Okay.
So,
And explain for our international audience, explain who Alexander Bedward is.
so Alexander Bedward came from the Native Baptist tradition. He was basically a revivalist preacher. So you had in Jamaica, if you trace it back from way back when the Ethiopian Baptist Church is founded in Jamaica, 1783, that you had what we call the Native Baptist movement. So Paul Bogle, what influenced the Bogle rebellion was the Native Baptist current that ran through. So it was really like a Africanization of the white Baptist tradition.
Okay.
Native Baptist is an African perspective, or an African version of the regular Baptist church. So, and it's really a thread of revivalism. So the irony is that a lot of the early revivalists, from Alexander Edwards' time, from his leadership, right, which was very strong in Jamaica in the late 19th century, going into the early 1900s. So Bedward he went on several marches. He was victimized as well by the colonial Jamaica. Unfortunately, he spends his last years in Bellevue.
Okay. And
Um,
didn't Bedward, wasn't he calling for a return to Africa?
yes, he was calling for a return to Africa in his own way, Africa being the root.
Yes.
But what was interesting is that there was a consciousness he inspired and he had instilled in his followers. Robert Hines was a key lieutenant that had their minds open for, you know, for Rastafari. So it's a step, if you look on the development of Rastafari, because Rastafari really is embedded in Ethiopianism, right?
Yeah, yes.
So the revivalists, the Native Baptist movement, really, so far as Jamaica is concerned, traces back to the Ethiopian Baptist Church. So it's the Ethiopianist thread there. So it
Okay.
wasn't far-fetched for these revivalists to actually become Rastafari, you know,
Okay.
because they
Okay.
had one foot at least embedded in an Ethiopianist tradition. So Robert Hines was a lieutenant of Bedward. Bedward is in prison in the early 20s, 1920s. And so after 1930, as we know, when His Imperial Majesty is becomes Emperor of Ethiopia, and the whole world is aware of this. It's publicized across the world, you know, New York Times and so forth. So even in the Western world, it's popularized. Um, so you know, the reality is that Howell takes on this as an incredible and powerful occurrence, and he is propagating the divinity of His Majesty. But Hines is beside him as his
Okay.
from the early 30s, 33.
So was Hines already preaching the divinity when Howell came to Jamaica, or was he influenced by Howell?
He was influenced by Howell.
Okay.
Influenced by Howell, but
And what?
he himself was a good organizer and a good,
Okay.
you know, he had leadership skills. So he was a great help with Howell. Now, unfortunately, how they separated ways was in 1934, in March 1934. Both were charged with sedition, and
Okay.
they came to the colonial state. They came under the radar because they were preaching that Haile Selassie is the king that Jamaicans should be worshiping, not King George V,
Yes.
the King of England at the time, not the colonial king. But so this was seen as seditious. So Howell and Hines were charged with sedition, right? And George Lyle Grant, who was the judge at the time, he actually made a pronouncement at this famous court case. It's detailed in the Gleaner from 1934. That Howell as the main protagonist, he's going to give him 2 years, and Hines he gave 1 year in prison. So, actual fact, in 1935, Hines is released from prison, and Howell doesn't get, Leonard Hall doesn't get to come out of prison until 1936. So what happened is when Hines came out, he went and he formed his own branch of Rastafari, King of Kings Mansion.
Okay.
And that's where they parted ways, which, you know, I think it, you know, it's one of those things. But the thing is, both of them kept on with the work.
Yes.
But having said that, so you had, and then you had Joseph Nathaniel Hibbert.
Yes.
In the 30s, preaching the divinity of Rastafari in his own way.
When did he rise in the timeline?
No, so there is a lot of questions here, and it's a very good question you asked, because he actually came to Jamaica prior to Hall in 1931. He comes back from Costa Rica. He spent time. What is important about all of the leaders at the time is they all traveled. Archibald Dunkley was a seaman. So this kind of helped to raise their consciousness. So aside from Hines, who was...
Let me hold on a second. Let me take time to big up the Jamaican diaspora, because a lot of time we get a lot of disrespect, you know what I mean? But when you look at the impact that the Jamaica diaspora, because these men were diaspora, they left Jamaica and returned home, like like I and I, like whole heap of, Jamaican born who out a road. So very interesting. I didn't realize that all of them had traveled, but continue.
Yeah, all of them are traveling except for Hines. But I said Hines,
Okay, Hines.
his eyes were opened by, I'm arguing, because of him following Bedwood, Alexander Bedwood, and then in coming close with Howell, Leonard Hall, his consciousness evolves to that of Rastafari. But
Yes.
he already, he was very experienced in terms of organization and leading abilities, because he was a lieutenant for Bedwood. So we had some in term, and this anti-colonial sentiment. Just to let you know, the revivalists or the native Baptists, call them what you want, were anti-colonial in all
Yes.
report. So it wasn't a far stretch for someone like Hines to become a Rastafari preacher, because the main ethos was anti-colonial. And that is why all of these early leaders were eventually convicted, because in the late 30s, Archibald Dunkley is in prison, and also is Hibbert, Joseph Nathaniel Hibbert finds himself in prison, for a couple of years or whatever. But it was Howell who is consistently sought after by the police and forces, constantly harassed. Even at Pinnacle, they come up to Pinnacle looking for him, trying to arrest him, and so forth. During the 40s, stretching right up to the 50s. So unfortunately for him, he's in jail for a year, then he comes out, spend a couple of years of freedom, then they catch him and then put him in Bellevue and so forth. And my perspective on that is because he was so influential on the masses, and he had probably the largest following. He had the largest following out of all of these early leaders.
Early leaders.
So
What do you think
then
made him
become
so
a target.
dynamic? What do you think made him so dynamic or was he charismatic, or what are the
Charisma, yeah, it's charismatic charisma. His vision, his tenacity in terms of self-reliance. I think he had learned all of Garvey's teachings and Garvey's approaches very well. So in reality, if you look at it under the microscope, he was utilizing Garveyite principles in establishing Pinnacle as an independent community, because this is what Garvey was telling Black Americans, do for yourself, establish your own communities. This is where the notion of economic nationalism comes in. Establish your own schools, educational nationalism, have your own cultural nationalism, your own form of entertainment, your own culture, propagate that, and then the notion even of military nationalism. Garvey actually had, his brigade, which was, emblematic of the military nationalism. And Leonard Hall did have guards, soldiers, at the entrance to Pinnacle. He had some, it wasn't like a free fall. Anyone can just come in whenever they want and leave or whatever. Place was defended. Now, but when they were faced with a whole barrage of colonial police coming in, I mean, there was a limit to what they could do to defend the premises, So, but people must realize it wasn't just unguarded and people, because, if you have a base, anywhere, whether it's a nation, whether it's a region, you have to defend it. I mean? You have to defend it, because in many cases, people who may want to destroy that base. But anyway, the reality is that he was very charismatic. He was very influential. He had a large following. And this is why he was seen as the most dangerous, certainly of the first generation leaders, most dangerous, the one that the state had their eyes on to neutralize, right? So unfortunately, with a certain amount of success, also comes the threat of wider forces seeking to wipe you out. So we have to also bear that in mind. History shows us that. Yeah.
Can you verify? I've seen a quote floating around online where from the Gleaner where Leonard Hall is talking about meetings the Rastafarites in America, or something to that effect. Because I know there's a brand of scholarship now coming on saying that there were also ones in America that did cite the divinity and that Leonard Howell had some interaction with these ones that, possibly in Chicago. Um, do you know anything about that history that's starting to be uncovered?
No, not really, because you know the whole issue here of Rastafari at the moment. I mean, the popular perspective is that it originated in Jamaica. That
Yes,
yeah.
yes.
So you may have persons, very likely you would have had persons that saw around the world the crowning of His Imperial Majesty as King of Kings, Lord of Lords, conquering land of the tribe. This would have had an impact on African people, black people, the globe over.
Around the world, yes.
But in terms of citing his divinity, now we know for sure there are key persons in Jamaica who did this.
Jamaica.
Some of the US, well, that's something that we need further.
I'm gonna have some brethren on that are supposed to bring some documentation.
Mm.
So I definitely will keep the eye posted.
Well, yeah, that would be interesting. And the question is, will those people who are professing the divinity, these leaders,
Yes,
why have we not heard about them more profusely? That no, because I mean, the US, you've always had a history of various black movements and different Pan African movements. A multitude. Because I actually want to say that one of the things that has been very clear to me is even an organization, this is the Nation of Islam, which could be seen as a polar opposite of Rastafari. One the common link is Garvey, Marcus Garvey, because the key leader of the Nation of Islam was Elijah Muhammad, who was known as Elijah Poole, who was a corporal in Garvey's UNIA. So if you look at some of the secular elements of the Nation of Islam, they've taken a lot from Garvey, because the notion of black economic nationalism, Nation of Islam does own a lot of its own businesses.
yeah.
So that's for
They have
them.
a whole area of Chicago,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
they deal with. So
And they
yeah,
have their own schools, so
yes,
education, nationalism, so that the members get their own specific type of education independently of the regular state. So I'm saying that to say that all over the world, and certainly in the US, we have various persons who influence the guy. Even the Moorish Science Temple, another
yes.
Islamic group, um, the person who starts that,
The Honorable
he
Drew Ali.
yeah, Drew Ali, that's right. He
Yeah,
venerates Marcus Garvey and actually called Marcus Garvey a prophet, to
yes.
show you the influence that Garvey had. So we can't, because Garvey was in the US for a while. Even for the short while he was there, he made a massive impression on the US.
Massive,
The
massive.
Harlem Renaissance movement, he was a large factor in that happening in the late 19 the early, I should say, well, 19 teens going into the 1920s. He was a major factor in the
Yes.
Harlem Renaissance movement. There's so many different groups that have come out have had, therein being in influence.
And what I'm seeing on a strategic level, that the state's attack on Pinnacle really
Yeah,
kind of cut that Garveyite structure, in terms of the economic nationalism that you talk about. We were severed from that model, and we're just now recovering. So look at that. I mean, this is decades and decades of delay caused by state intervention. So it really was a strategic blow that we face. You know what I mean?
yeah,
That shifted us off that course.
absolutely, absolutely. Hit the nail on the head there. It was a blow. Was a major blow to the Rastafari community in general, but also in terms of fulfilling at least some of the key elements of Garvey's dream. Because I would argue if we look at Garvey's vision and his dream, we haven't fulfilled it yet. We don't have our own shipping line yet. You know what I mean? Don't we should have our own independently have our own air airline. You know what I mean? So that if people want, I mean, in the U.S. at least you can get direct flights to Africa. Here in the Caribbean, we don't have any direct flights to the continent. So and ships. How are you going to trade with Africa if you don't have any ships of your own and so forth? So we still have our work cut out in terms of to fulfill some of the key elements of Garvey's dream.
And again, because we were cut from that economic model that Pinnacle represented, we weren't able to accumulate the capital to do some of the works. Because what was Garvey doing? Garvey was not buying bicycles. Garvey was trying to buy ships. You know what I mean? So
There you go.
massive capital investment.
Yeah,
But he was infiltrated by the FBI
that's right.
and sabotage. If Garvey hadn't been sabotaged, he would have well been successful at his endeavors. And we, as the downstream, I would say, as Rastafari coming out of this Garvey tradition, it seems like we kept the repatriation and other aspects, but that economic focus, that business focus, small businesses, the laundromats, the this, the that. Garvey was very big, the grocery stores, and setting up that infrastructure. And this is what, when we talk about a Rastafari golden age, because I'm pushing that, Dr. Barnett, this Rastafari golden age, because I feel like if we don't articulate where we're going and what we want to see, how can we achieve it? You know what I mean? If we're not talking about building the alternative. And I'm speaking to you right now as the world is plunging into the darkness of war, where global supply chains are at threat. Jamaica imports a lot of food. You know what I mean? All of the Caribbean islands are very vulnerable to a break in the global supply chain. And so this Pinnacle model may not just be an academic exercise. We really, may need to return to, and I wouldn't say may, we should be preparing to return to that model, because I also hear that Pinnacle did not just supply itself. Pinnacle had surplus where they could help
Yeah,
supply outside. You know what I mean? So
that's right. Yeah.
talk about that part.
Well, I mean, they had surplus, so they weren't just selling. Ganja was the main cash crop, but whether it was, you know, whether it was any of the standard vegetables, cocoa, dasheen, and so forth, yams, they, could distribute that to people in the market, and as even to the main market here in Kingston. They were able to supply vendors with produce and so forth. So they were producing so much from the land that they had, and a diversity of crops that not only could they feed themselves comfortably, but they could sell and provide ground provisions to people, just not just in Spanish Town, but in Kingston as well, and so that model is something to be said, um, because you're not just talking about living just to feed yourself, but having producing excess, and generating capital. And then when you have that capital, then it's just a matter of investing that. So the reality is it was a model, and we have to realize this is colonial Jamaica. So
Yes.
you could say it's almost inevitable that this wasn't gonna last for that long. In fact, it lasted for really 14 years. So even that's something to be said. Just more than a decade. So from 1940 to really 54 was when that the destruction of Pinnacle started. But for the time that they were there, and I've been able to speak with Monty Howell and Billy Howell, who grew up as young. They were children. Billy Howell was born in Pinnacle, 1942. Monty was, he was, when they moved to Pinnacle, he would have been about 1 or 2 years old. But by the time it was destroyed, well, Monty is very vivid about his life and, how, well, both of them actually, because, they lived a very happy lifestyle and had a very happy childhood at Pinnacle. But when that ganja rate came in 54. I mean, both Billy and Monty have Monty especially very emotional. He's in tears, crying, and that was very traumatic for both of them. But I think Monty was really shaken up by that.
Serious.
And it was so devastated because you imagine you're living such a comfortable and happy lifestyle, and then you're thrown out of that, and all of that. You have to see it all destroyed in front of your eyes. The house is being burned down. And in many cases there was food in massive pots on the fire, and the soldiers just threw that over or whatever. Because people were in the middle of the day just trying to get ready for the day and stuff, and just everything that was built up was just destroyed. And we have to realize as well that think about the pain and anguish that Leonard Hall suffered out of that catastrophe. Because notably, after Pinnacle is destroyed and totally wrecked, Leonard Hall is no longer a very visible Rastafari leader in the scheme of things. Other leaders start to really take, you could say, front and center. You know what I mean? One of them being King Emmanuel or Prince Charles Edwards. Baba Shanti, Rise Up, 1958. So the same time that we have the devastation and the scattering of the last of the Howlites who are living at Pinnacle, from Pinnacle. We see Baba Shanti and Nyabingi Rasbona G's front and center, in the movement. There's this important groundation that took place in Wall in 1958, that convention.
Yes.
Sign of Leonard Hall at that convention, or anything like that. Then when His Majesty visited Jamaica, and he awards medals to all the outstanding Rastafari leaders in 1966. No sign of Leonard Hall. You know what I mean? He lived up until 1981, but his he was relatively low, had a low profile. during those former years of his life. So it's he suffered. He suffered for being upfront, being bold, having this bold vision, and so forth.
and
So
and and
yeah.
we can argue that his movement that he helped to spark now even has exceeded the size of the Garvey movement, in terms of there now being millions of Rastafari around the world.
Well, that's an interesting point there. I mean, maybe about the same. We may have to do a survey on that because Garvey's, this is at a very conservative estimate. The UNIA at its peak, conservative is 6 million. Some people even argue, Tony Sewell, for instance, interesting enough, argues it was 10 million strong. But having said that, I mean, yeah, I would have thought we have at least 6 million members in the Rastafari movement. But having said that, though, think about the massive achievement Garvey made, more than 100 years ago. There's no internet,
No, you
right?
can you
It's
can't
very,
beat Garvey
it's,
pun that
I mean,
because
and the question is that with all of the communication we have with us, Zoom and the internet and all of that stuff, in theory, right? You start an organization and so forth. Well, in theory, Rastafari could be 20 million strong or whatever. So we have to still give credit where it's due because with fewer resources, some of these early leaders were able to galvanize effectively, some large audiences. I mean, just by taking this Negro World newspaper on ships and having people spread it around the world globally, Garvey, I mean, at a conservative estimate, 6 million in the 1920s. I mean, man, 100 years ago. I mean, to me, that's a fantastic achievement. So, I mean, Rastafari, yeah, we're a few million strong, but arguably we could argue we should be, 50 million or whatever. I mean, let's
yeah,
look at the population of
yeah,
African people
no,
around the world.
no, definitely. I think once we start to balance out the enterprise part and the physical infrastructure, that's when you're going to see an explosion in the numbers on the continent of Rastafari. And this is why, have that economic focus here, because without that balance, we become imbalanced as a global family. We're spiritually, is mighty. We cannot be questioned. I think we've shown, the
Yeah.
resilience and the spiritual power that we harness. Now, where we lack is the infrastructure, the ability to build a school and to staff and to meet the payroll, every Friday. What I mean, we
Yeah.
haven't reached that industrial stage of the movement, but I think we're shifting slowly into that movement. I see someone in the comments was concerned that they saw a commercial on YouTube and they unsubscribe and all of that. And we give thanks. This may not be the platform for the eye because we are, fully seeking that economic balance on the platform because without it, what we found trotting in this movement is that things not sustainable. You know what I mean? Without having that economic balance. You know what I mean? It's great to be spiritually inclined, but what we're also finding as even parents is we, not being able to employ our youths. You know what I mean? Is also been a challenge. We raise up our youths them in the liberty and then we send them out to the world to go find work. You know, if you look at other communities, they have people within you can be within that community and live and raise a family, and that's what the challenge that we face. You know what I mean? And this is what Garvey I think why the UNIA was so connectable around the world because people could not just hear Garvey, the rhetoric, but they could see, you know what I mean, the manifestation of black power in action, you know, whether it be the businesses, whether it be the parades, whether it be reading a copy of the Negro World and you're seeing all the advertisements, and you know what I mean, you're feeling like, okay, this is something that's serious, you know what I mean? So black people around the world that weren't seeing this from a black perspective, because remember, information was controlled by the colonial powers. So when you know, someone smuggles in a copy of the Negro World and you're able to see, oh my gosh, all of this activity and it's black, you know, from top to bottom, that's going to inspire membership. You know what I mean? That's going to inspire people more than, you know, how we have spread, which is just reggae music. And, you know, it's a spiritual height and a vibration, and we give thanks. But people got to go to work. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, the realities of life have pulled a lot out of this liberty, because if we have 6 million in the liberty, we've had 12 million that were a Rasta that, you know what I mean, passed through, you know what I mean, for a little while and went on to do something else. So these are things we have to be realistic about. And what I wanted to do this evening is just really look at Leonard Howell and the lessons that we can learn from him, and then also how do we as Rastafari position him so that when we're talking about a John Henry Clark, when we're talking about a Padmore, when we're talking about, you know, some of the greats, Leonard Howell name is mentioned, because right now outside of Rastafari, I don't think you would hear Leonard Howell's name called, you know, in that lineup. And arguably, his impact is just as substantial as some of the names that I've called. How do you see that?
Well, I mean, key thing is that um, Leonard Hall was a key proponent of the movement, of the Rastafari movement, undoubtedly, because many of us consider him the father of the movement. And even recently, there's been conversation, certainly as far back as 2016, I think it was, or 2017, that his Earth Strong is very close to Father's Day, and in some cases, such as last year, 2024, it fell on Father's Day. In fact, June the 16th, thereabout. But rightly so, because he's the father of the Rastafari movement. Now, fact of the matter is, though, there's still something that should be done. I want to mention this, and that is that there has been let me just say, there has been some recognition that was given to him recently by the state of Jamaica, but he was given the lowest national honors. So he's been given the OD, Order of Distinction.
Yeah.
This is 2022. And the position of the Leonard Hall Foundation, the LPH Foundation, is that give thanks for the national honors, but make him a full national hero, St.
Straight.
Marcus Garvey and so forth, for what he gave, and the thing about it was, in his own way, he was trying to uplift all of Jamaica, the major population of Jamaica. I mean, he was preaching to black people around the island. I spent most of his time on the east of Ireland, mind you, particularly in St. Thomas, as well as Kingston. But he was trying to uplift black people across the wider island. So why not national hero status? The other thing is expunge the criminal records that he has in Jamaica, because he was persecuted so many times. And thankfully, Garvey, it was relatively recently, but his criminal records have been expunged as far as Jamaica is concerned. So let one of the populace to know, 218. There were many talks and so forth. Actually, with this current administration, JLP, and it was decided that In 217, we had these deliberations about the national heroes. So it wasn't just Garvey, it was George William Gordon, it was Sam Sharp and Paul Bogle, four national heroes who still had their criminal records, on the record. You know what I mean? So they were all expunged in 218. Leonard Hall, give him a national honor. Should be, so far as the LPH Foundation is concerned, national hero status, expunge the criminal records. You know.
So that's something I think as RMO that should be collectively advocated for, because um, definitely Leonard Howell deserves to be a national hero when you consider what Rastafari has done for Jamaica. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How could you deny him that honor? And this is why we have to come with that one voice, you know what I mean? Because there's a lot of work to be done, and I have that obligation to shape the future. Um, we have a question. Is that my phone?
No, it's yeah.
It is. I think it's both of us.
It's both of us because it must be the you see we have too many things happening simultaneously. Ras Kwasi, RMO thing. Yes. So
Yeah,
Sister Anadine wants to know why what happened to the people of Pinnacle. Well,
yeah. The
as I
children.
said, the
Yes.
children. Well, I mean, destitution, poverty, because you're going from a relatively comfortable lifestyle, not wanting for anything, to being homeless and destitute. So what happened is that the whole lights went from the heights of heights to the lowest of the lowest. And I tell you, and I anybody who is in Jamaica has a chance. Have a grounding with the Howlites, especially those in Tregeda Park. Look at the conditions they're living in. This is generational poverty because we have generational wealth, which we must all strive for. If somebody, in the family manages to strike it rich and be relatively successful financially, then you should seek to pass to that your generation, your future generations
Of
want
course.
nothing. So one of the things many people make a point of pointing out us in Jamaica, and I'm sure beyond that, is Bob Marley. Look at the Bob Marley family, right? So, and even Bob said, my children shall not, shall not want for anything, and so forth in his own way. So but that is it's a template of generational wealth is what we seek, but we also have generational poverty. Too many of us experience that. So that the whole lights are experience generational poverty, in short, right? Living in shacks,
Yes.
not knowing where them getting the next morsel to live, to eat, and so forth. Poverty is the issue. One and two manage to make something for themselves and so forth, and mainly those who had to travel to foreign, ironically, have to go to the US or whatever, make some money, and then they're able to say, yes, let me contribute to ones and ones who need it. But by and large, generational poverty is what people are suffering from. All right, that's the issue, and that's
Um,
something that we just have to be aware of. Black communities in general across the world, we haven't arrived yet. Yes, a few of us we can point to say, oh, we have a black superstar here and one is there and there. But how far does that wealth spread, right? Because most people are going to look at their immediate family first, right? So we can't assume that a multimillionaire, a black millionaire, even in the US, is going to say, yeah, I'm going to give, just spread my money all over this black population or whatever. So our challenge is still for many of us to achieve a degree of wealth where we can significantly impact other people's lives. Yeah. So yeah. But in a nutshell, generational poverty is what we have in the case of the whole life, many of the whole lives now. Yeah.
Were any of the children taken into foster care? Did any of them have to deal with that situation that we know of?
Foster care, and that wasn't really an issue. I mean, foster care. I don't even know if we had a functioning foster care
Foster care
system in
system
Jamaica at that
in
time. I mean,
Jamaica.
they didn't really regard the lives of poor black people as anything. They were left to fend for themselves. So when you talk about foster care, that's a very modern kind of conception. This is the 1950s. So people were left to fend for themselves, you know. So in some cases, maybe the parents would voluntarily give their children to somebody who was better off, voluntarily give their children to a relative who was maybe relatively in a better financial situation than them. But foster care wasn't really a factor, as far as I know, at that time.
Sister Marie said, thank you. He was placed in psychiatric hospitals and prisons for so many years. The Jamaican government should apologize for his suffering. Has any formal apology been given?
No formal apology has been given. So yeah, that's another thing that could be considered. So as I said, his criminal records have not been expunged as yet, and so forth. He's been given this national honor in 2022, notably the lowest rank, but a national honor. So there's still other steps that could be taken. So give
Yes.
thanks to that contribution. Yeah.
And I really think that says something, both Leonard Howell and Bob Marley, I think, should be national heroes by the criteria that they've established. And these are things that we, I think, have to advocate for because, again, without Rastafari, where would Jamaica be? You know what I mean? This is what, gives Jamaica the leg up, so to speak, on all the other Caribbean islands in terms of global recognition. Pre-Bolt, we have to say Usain Bolt is also a major factor as well, but pre-Bolt, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Reggae music, Bob Marley, Rastafari, that people associate with Jamaica. What I want to know, and we have a top scholar here, Dr. Michael Barnett, top level Rastafari, high level reasoning here on the Lion Voice Network. So we have to use this brain power because we're here, Dr. Barnett, conceptualizing this golden age of Rastafari. You know what I mean? We're conceptualizing what does this look like in terms of the components, in terms of the brick and mortar. Can the Leonard Howell community model be replicated or scaled? Because I'm thinking of a kind of decentralized, centralized model. Because do we want to, as Rastafari, replicate this kind of big city skyscraper culture, or do we want to, have developments where it's smaller communities, but those communities interconnect
Yeah.
to create that scale, in terms of how do you see Leonard Howell being a model for the golden age?
Well, my thing is, we could attempt to have self-sufficient communities that are very closely knit, but not necessarily a skyscraper model, but a more ITAL type of liberty, because notably the housing that the Howlites had were wattle and daub cottages, so something more eco-friendly. So we I mean, a skyscraper and flats, and I think is going in the other direction than
Yes.
Rastafari liberty would be. But that liberty of living in a sort of extended village,
Yes.
and real community, and people with various skills, so that somebody there is an electrician, somebody there is good at plumbing, you know what I mean, a variety of skills, so that that's the self-sufficient. So you're not just all farmers, but somebody who can
Yes. Yes.
deal with technology, because even living in an ITAL liberty, we have now come accustomed to computers and internet and so forth, and saying
We need our own Starlink. We need our own Starlink. Rastafari, if you have our own satellites, you know
there
what I
you go.
mean?
Yeah.
All these things. We can't think small, Dr. Barnett, anymore. We have to
There you go.
crash.
Yes, yes. So where are they? So you need your engineers, you need
Yes.
persons who are very familiar with herbs and health wise, how to treat certain conditions, what kind of herbs can address them, or whatever the situation, or sort of medically minded. You see an issue coming on, maybe somebody's having kidney problem or whatever, can address that, you know what I mean? So people skilled in all areas so that you're truly self-sufficient as a
Yeah.
community. Yes.
Because we have to look at a person like Elon Musk to see what is possible in the private sector. You have a private citizen who create a global communication infrastructure. So that means that we as Rastafari supposed to can create our own communication infrastructure. You know what I mean? Because right now, if this internet get locked off, we don't have no solution. We just off the internet. We don't have no, power as a people to
Yeah. Well,
get
I mean,
forward.
even outside of the internet, but how many black owned platforms do we have?
Do we have exactly?
Not many, so Elon Musk, Twitter and or X, you know what I mean? Instagram is not black owned, Facebook.
Facebook.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
mean, so what happened to the black owned platforms? Why haven't people thought about that?
No.
Because it's a good point, and we're here, we're talking right now, but we're conversing on somebody's platform. You know,
I just lost a subscriber. I'm saying don't want to see no YouTube ads.
there you
But
go. Yeah,
we don't have Rastafari tube, you know what I mean? And
yeah,
we,
yeah, yeah,
if I'm gonna
yeah,
use YouTube, I'm gonna
yeah,
monetize because them I use my content for get ads. I want some of the money too.
yeah,
So
yeah,
but that's the reality that we're living in
yeah. That's
right
reality.
now, is
Yeah,
that we don't own these things, but I want us to use Leonard Howell. This is why I think it's so important that we
yeah.
kind of look at his model.
We look at that model, and we expand it and we
We
extend it
expand
to.
it and scale it,
Oh, there you go. There you go. Yes.
because nobody's trying to live without a flat screen TV right now. You know what I mean? The
There you go.
way this
Yes.
flat screen was not is nice. When you sit back and you can watch a film or a documentary
Yeah.
on your flat screen, you feel nice.
Yeah.
So we're not saying we want to go back, but
Yeah.
that flat screen should be produced by a Rastafari mechanical engineer, or mechanical.
Electronic engineer. Well, what we have to do is we have
Yes.
to look at the skill set that we
Yes.
have in our communities. What is the spread of skills, and there obviously are areas lacking, and we should be very um very, very cognizant of what areas are lacking. We can't just sometimes we just dismiss certain things and we just keep moving forward. But you know, down the road we have to see what are the gaps that need to be filled, if not at this present time. So yeah,
And
it's and I like the fact that you're looking at Leonard Hall through these spectacles, Rasquaz. Yes.
No, this is what we have to do.
Yeah, that's commendable. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
and then we have to also preserve the anciency, as you say, because we don't want to go too much in one direction or the other, you know.
yeah,
So part of that anciency for Leonard Hall was living up in the hills, you know,
yeah.
away from the city. Talk about that. I heard that they had mastered agriculture on the hillside, you know, and utilizing their environment, water catchment systems. You know, talk to us about some of the ingenious of Pinnacle, and where did he learn that? Was that from the Howellites that came with him, or was he someone who?
Well,
Go
well,
ahead.
that's a good question, but essentially, the community that came to Pinnacle was a you know, multi-diverse community that there was an assortment of skills that were there. So in terms of having a well and the water catchment system, you know, people had there were the necessary skills to formulate the community, to have a functioning community. You know, they had people who knew how to farm, you know, how to grow crops and all of that stuff. The people who were very, you know, versed in uh, cooking and yeah, you name it, any skill that we're looking at that was needed. It was there within the community. It was just one of those things, and that's what helped to make it self-sufficient community. But I think that, you know, when people are inspired by a vision and when people buy into a vision, you know, it is possible for this to happen. Um, it is
Yes.
possible for it to happen, but people have to buy into that as well.
And
Oh, the
that's
truth
why
is,
we're pushing the golden age, because we
yeah,
can't just be here as Rastafari and yes, the
yeah,
liberty, but
yeah,
we're not working toward
right,
something greater than we
absolutely,
are. You know what I mean? We have to work to something greater
yes,
than we
ab-
are. And big up the legendary attorney Henry Shillingford out of
mm,
Dominica. Big up yourself. Ras Daniel, they had a bakery too. And big up Ras Daniel out of Montego Bay. Big up yourself, Ras Daniel. So industry, and again, I want to keep pushing this into us. You know what I mean? These are things that, um, you know what I mean,
right,
so
yes,
crucial. Stonemasons, carpenters.
yes.
You know
Oh
what I
yeah,
mean?
yes, yes. All the necessary things to have a thriving community. As I said, a diversification of skilled people, of skilled persons. So that is why, you know, one has to be, you know, very discerning about formulating a community. Do you have enough diversity of skills in the community to make it work? You know what I mean? If we just have all legal minds or we just have all medically minded people, that's not going to be enough to make the community thrive. So yeah, so we have a blueprint of sorts here.
Yes. Yeah.
On your
I,
as callers.
I'm
I
gonna.
just want to say one thing though, Rasquasi,
Yes.
as it would happen, you know, I have just alert on my phone that somebody is ready for an interview now, so it's kind of
Okay.
back. Yeah, I
No
probably
problem.
take a
You're a very busy man. We reached
where.
the 10 o'clock. This is our ceiling time. Just give us some final word sound, or you have to quickly.
Yeah, well, the final word sound I would say is that we must remember the sacrifices that many of our leaders in the Rastafari movement, not just Leonard Hall, but Leonard Hall certainly made a great sacrifice for the vision he had, for the love he had for black people generally in Jamaica at that time. But we have to take note of the sacrifices and not make it all go to waste. You know, our ancestors, even our own, talking our own family tree, had a vision that they wanted to aspire to. So we should try to bring those dreams to fruition. And as I said, not just Leonard Hall, but even Garvey's dream is still not being realized today. So we, in our own way, should try to see what we can do to contribute to the realization of some of these dreams. It may not happen in our lifetime, but at least, try to, push things in that direction, and pass the baton on. And it's important that the younger generation really feel inspired to do to realize the dreams of heroes and sheroes such as Marcus Garvey, um, and I should mention the two Amy's, Amy Ashwood Garvey and Amy Jacques Garvey, who did
Yes.
considerable work and contribution to the UNIA. So as well as the heroes, we have the sheroes as well, So it's up to us to keep the train moving, so to speak, and pass on the baton, because very importantly, I'm wondering how much of the younger generation, those in their 20s or whatever, the so-called, some of them call, whether they want to call themselves millennials or Gen Z, but do they see the importance of realizing these dreams that our heroes and heroes of the past? And some of them don't. I can tell you here in Jamaica, because history is not it's not compulsory in Jamaica. So many of the youths don't have a sense of the history. You have to tell them who Marcus Garvey was, let alone Leonard Hall and so forth. You have to start with the basics. But anyway, this is the key thing, is that we must try and keep the train moving and move towards the realization of the visions of these great leaders and heroes and sheroes which we've had in the past. So, yeah.
Thanks, Dr. Barnett. Give a warm welcome in the chat to Dr. Barnett. This is your home. We'll have you forward. I had a couple more questions for you. I wanted to know what Pinnacle would have looked like if it didn't have the raid, and some other questions, but we'll save that for the next time. Big up Ross Miguel and all of the other media. Dr. Barnett is doing a press run, so we have to respect our colleagues in the other media, and look forward to seeing you again, Dr. Barnett.
All right. Give thanks, Ras Kwasi.
Yeah,
Give thanks for the work. Yeah. Bless.
Yes, I. Blessings. So, family, you see, I don't have a Ferrari, and I don't have a Bugatti. I'm a burnout Versace, but I have brethren of the highest caliber, scholars and dignitaries and farmers and all kind of brethren that I can invite to come on the Lion Voice Network and share a reasoning as we build out the architecture of this Rastafari golden age. It starts as a word sound, it starts as thoughts, then we start to manifest it bit by bit, piece by piece, brick by brick. This is how we're going to do it. We're going to film it. We're going to showcase it to the world. We're going to talk about it as we build it. We're going to make mistakes. We're going to correct the mistakes. All of that are going to happen right here on the Lion Voice Network. And the item are going to be an active part and participants in this uprising. And this is going to happen against the backdrop of the Great Armageddon War. So as Babylon is collapsing around us, we're not going to despair. We're not going to worry. We're not going to fret. We're going to be building. And I'm very careful to say build, because the golden age is not going to happen by itself. It's going to happen with active action by I and I have to manifest it. We have to conceive it. And that's why we have to be clear about it. We got to reason. If we don't reason about this thing, and we think it's fantasy, or we just keep it in our iris, then our reality is not going to change. Whatever you don't change, you choose. So if we don't reason about what we want to see, this idyllic, Edenic place, then how can we achieve it? How can we work towards something that maybe you have a different concept and you have we have to take all of our conceptions, what I mean, and knots it out. And maybe you build peace in a Chad, and maybe our next brethren build peace in a South Sudan, and maybe our next brethren Ghana, a Ouagadougou, in a Burkina Faso, and build peace. And this is what's going to make Africa airy and nice, because your concept and my concept might not be the same, but we're building the ideal to I and I in different places, and the diversity of that, being able to visit different people concept really makes it heaven on earth and irony, because you might not conceive of something that somebody else conceive of. So it's a great strength. Great show. RIP to the ESP McPherson Rastologist movement. He did a good works on the Howellites in Harlem, NYC in the 1920s. So Howell extended outside of Jamaica. That would be excellent to know. Johnny Johnson, we're communicating on email. I did see your email. I want to get the eye on the show. We're going to try work that out. Because there I have so much knowledge and information. We have to get Johnny Johnson, our regular Lion Pride. He always nice up the comments with some knowledgeable things. We want him on the show, because we can tell he's an elder that's full of archival knowledge of the history. And that's one of the things we're doing. This platform is trying to capture the testimony of the elders so that the global family can sip on them, you know what I mean? But again, we're here live. We are here to monetize and to make some money, so that we can hire a staff, we can build out the content, because as Dr. Barnett said, Generation Z, the millennials, if we want them to show interest, we have to create content for them. We have to be in the spaces that they are. They're in the digital space. They're called digital natives. So if we, as a Rastafari family, want to reach our youths, then we have to be able to come create that compelling content, and that's gonna require money, staff, them thing there. So I understand some of I and I's Rastafari. I feel like any work's supposed to be a free will offering to the Most High, and I respect it. But this is not that, because we do that. You know what I mean? The amount of work we do, volunteer for Rastafari. There are very few on creation who do more than I. Me not say there are none, we might can match, but there are very few, and we can say that with confidence, knowing the works that we have done and that we are doing behind the scene. But the Lion Voice Network, we have to make money with it, which is why we're using the crowdfunding strategy, building the Patreon, and all of these things. We would love not to depend on any YouTube revenue and just deal with the Patreon, but as the item can see, our 38 people we have in the Patreon after almost 3 years of operation, which is not terrible, for a young content creator channel. It takes time, particularly the demographic that we're targeting, which is the root of the Rastafari family, and we have never done something like this collectively before, supporting a content platform as a global family. We have never done this, so it's going to take time, and I'm confident, and as I say, I'm blessed with a network that allows I to be able to take the blows, and the criticism from the ones them, and brush off these things, and to be a trailblazer. There will be youths under I that come inspired by this platform that will create even bigger platforms, and that will have 10,000 people in their Patreon, or 50,000. That's going to come as a certainty. But someone has to pioneer, someone has to come. And I don't mind being that, because I was called to do this by the Most High, Kadamawi, Haile Selassie the first. And I'm going to fulfill the mandate that was given to I by the Most High and do the work. As long as the item continue to watch, continue to send in the strength and the love, I'm one will continue to work. Why? Because the time has come for the lions to tell our own story. And this is the lion's voice.
King, and the time has come for the lions and the lioness to tell their own story. This is the lion's voice. Give thanks and praise for the wonderful blessing that's been poured on me. Give thanks and praise. Jah use I as an instrument to set the people free. Jah give her the powers to chant. Jah give her the powers to chant. Rastafari, the lion's voice.
What are you waiting for? Come together, calling from near and far. Know who you are. What are you waiting for? Rally up, it takes the dust. What are you waiting for? Ancestors paved the way for us. Yes, I am Ketis Oyonde, asking, what are you waiting for to come together? The time has come for the lions to tell our own story. This is the lion's voice.
Yes, Jah people, this is Michael Shemai representing. I say, hear the lion voice, saying it is time for the lions and the lionesses to tell their own story. King David killed Goliath with a stone, we original dread.
The fittest of the fittest shall survive. My people, open your eyes. Wake up. Blessed love, this is Queen Omega representing for all lions and lionesses. With the lion's voice, we come to tell our story. Rastafari live it. Hey, the lion's voice, Rastafari.
It's AWTITUDE representing for Lion's Voice. Yes, massive. This is the time for I and I, the lion them to tell I and I story, our story. Yes, and we reign and rule like this. Reign and rule, yeah. Selassie, I reign and rule. You can't take the lion vibes, people. If you no fool, cause we no Selassie reign and rule. Reign and rule. Selassie, I reign and rule. Queen Omega drop them in the fire, pull from them. No Queen Omega, she reign and rule. Royal Kushite, ancient essence, Emperor Selassie in a majestical presence, flash of all sevens, projecting through I and I events. We sing a song for the king, we bring joy and blessing and understanding, yeah. We hear Jah every day. Reign and rule, yeah. Selassie, I reign and rule. Yes, I lion vibes, Selassie, I reign and rule. Attitude say that Boondocks, Black Organization of Noble Diplomats optimizing expressions to the world. Till the world, till the end.
Amina, the time has come for the lioness to tell our own story. No surrender, no retreat, we are Jaja soldier. Rougher than the streets, tougher than a boulder. Bigging up Lamb's voice. Now put it, I Jalifa said that.
Greetings, this is Ras Shiloh. The time has come for the lions to tell their own story. See? This is the lion's voice. Keep it locked, right here, sir. Ras Shiloh said that. Are you satisfied? Wipe those tears from your eyes. I'm all alone, still you thought I was telling a lie. This is the lion's voice. Keep it locked, right here, sir.
I will never stop, hail the Most High, and I will never stop, call Ras Tafari. Blessed love, this is Kushite representing for the Lion's Voice. We are here to tell our own story, Rastafari.
Yeah, David Dread of Steel Person. I'm saying hail to the lion voice because it's time that the lion have its voice, have its own story. Says I'm stepping out here. Hear me now. Yeah, the lion's voice. Raw.
Well, lion voice, tell them that's the people first choice. Lion voice, make the lioness them feel nice. Lion voice, with the lion cubs we sacrifice. Lion voice, got to show the people them the life. Lion voice.